Listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Todd Searles with Wide River. Just want to let everybody know that we are going to start in about 2 minutes, give everybody a chance to dial in. But please, as a reminder, you'll be in listen-only mode, but you can always ask questions in the chat window, and we'll get started shortly. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is Todd Searles. I'm the Executive Director of Wide River. I want to welcome everybody to our latest webinar. For those of you who are familiar with Wide River, you know that we obviously focus on helping our clients meet the most recent health IT challenges. And of course, meaningful use HIPAA. These are topics that are not going away, and they definitely increase the complexity of security reporting as well as other types of reporting for you as a healthcare organization. And so we always try to bring in industry experts to help us answer the questions, but then also highlight technical solutions that will make your life easier. And at Wide River, we're always on the lookout for new partners, people who can join us to again, deliver quality products at reasonable prices, but that really do make your jobs easier and much more satisfying. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and kind of walk through this. For those of you on the call who haven't worked with Wide River before, there's a little bit about what we do, and then basically, we definitely encourage you to reach out to us if you're running into any sort of regulatory reporting problems or EHR rip or replace. But today, we really want to focus on HIPAA. We want to focus on the challenges that HIPAA security compliance brings, both as it resides inside of the meaningful use program, but also under the larger umbrella of HIPAA. Definitely whether or not you're a hospital or a single provider practice, you're still faced with the same requirements to ensure that your electronic PHI is secure, that you're monitoring your devices, your audit logs, what sort of information is being sent out across your systems, and how you really need to protect those systems moving forward and running risk analysis and things like that. And so we're very happy to have Anupam Sahai, who is the co-founder and president of eGestalt Technologies, with us today. He's a recognized expert in this field. He has a number of years in health IT, cloud computing, security, and compliance, and he holds 3 worldwide patents and published 10 technical papers, featured numerous conferences, but of course, the most important speaking event he's ever done is today, because our clients are the most important thing to us. So without further ado, Anupam, thank you for being here today, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to learn more about eGestalt.
Thank you, Todd, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending the session today. Let me take control of the screen here.
Yep, there you go, sir.
Thank you very much. So again, my name is Anupam Sahai. I'm co-founder and president of eGestalt Technologies. And the topic that we will cover today is regarding HIPAA Omnibus Compliance, how to meet meaningful use requirements. So in terms of the different subtopics that I would cover today, we will start out by summarizing some of the changes that have taken place recently as a result of HIPAA Omnibus, and what does it mean in terms of changes and implications. What does it mean for medical providers, covered entities, business associates, and anybody who is engaged in the medical community. And then I will talk about meaningful use grants and how to do meaningful use assessments to get the federal grants, and talk about some of the best practices and caveats that we've learned from other medical providers and entities that are going through the process. And then we'll talk about how do you start, where do you start, how do you assess HIPAA compliance, and how do you continuously maintain it. So there is a process that we recommend that every covered entity or a business associate follow, And so we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about a tool from eGestalt called AGify that helps you automate the assessment and allows you to continuously monitor your HIPAA security risk and compliance status. So we will talk about that, and we'll also talk about what are the OCR audit requirements that HHS expects. By the way, HHS stands for Health and Human Services. So we will talk about what are the audit protocol requirements and how to meet or exceed those requirements. And then we'll have Q&A at the end. While we are going through the session, please feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A section of the GoToWebinar box question area, and we will take the questions at the end. As a part of the tool demo, we will also give you a live demo of the tool so that you get a good sense of what the actual solution looks like. So before we start, some standard disclaimers about the webinar today. The information, while this is latest and up to date, is should not be construed as legal advice. And while we made every effort to ensure the information is up to date and latest, it's not to be construed as legal counsel. So let's get started. So what I show here is a summary of changes that took place in September of 2013. That's when the HIPAA Omnibus final rule was activated, and going forward, September 2013, the HIPAA Omnibus rule comes into effect. So some of the key changes that were part of HIPAA Omnibus are listed here. So one key change was that business associates are also responsible to ensure that PHI information is protected and that they are HIPAA compliant. There are some new changes in terms of how the PHI information can be shared and how it can be used for marketing or fundraising purposes. So that's a big change. And the patient or the customer is required to be completely in the loop to understand how and where the information is being shared, and they have exclusive rights to either accept or deny that. So this is all implemented through a new version of NPP, which is Notice of Privacy that every covered entity needs to ensure, and every customer or patient needs to opt in to agree to sharing the information. So there are revisions to NPPs, there are revisions to business associate agreements, there are new policies, new documentation that are required as a result of these new changes. And then there are requirements on HHS, Health and Human Services, and Office of Civil Rights is the enforcement agency from HHS who's now required to investigate in case a breach happens or a willful neglect is deemed to have happened. And willful neglect, in short, means that if a covered entity or a business associate who are now required by law to be HIPAA compliant and they don't take any steps in that direction, that can be construed as willful neglect, and that leads to highest level fines and potentially not just civil fines but criminal prosecution. So the penalty tiers have gone up. The maximum fines have gone up from $50,000 per year to $1.5 million per incident with no upper limit. So these are some of the new changes that have really upped the ante in terms of making sure that every covered entity and business associate are HIPAA compliant. If not, there are penalties. And of course, the carrot there is the meaningful use grant that the government has put aside $28 billion to make sure that everybody is HIPAA compliant and using electronic medical records to further the cause of HIPAA Omnibus. There are some changes to the risk analysis and harm threshold for breaches. So right now the requirement is that if you get breached, you are required to report to HHS of the breach. And if you're a business associate, there's a reporting structure that has been put in place. So the bottom line is that the government has become very serious about ensuring that everybody is following the law, is HIPAA compliant, and the overall objective for HIPAA, just to take a step back, is really to facilitate easier sharing of electronic medical records through implementation of EMR. But once you put information on the internet, it's subject to breach, to being hacked, and so privacy and security becomes a very important issue, which is really the focus of HIPAA Omnibus. So how does it affect covered entities, BAs, and vendors? So this is really where it comes down to how does it affect you and me. So as I said, the covered entities, BAs, and subcontractors, anybody and everybody who either directly acquires the PHI information or touches the PHI information, either through a covered entity sharing it with them, are now required to be HIPAA compliant. And not only that, there is a shared responsibility and shared liability. The liability chain is in place now between covered entities, BAs, and subcontractors to ensure that the PHI information is being protected. So privacy and security of PHI is a shared responsibility. And not only that, the government has put aside $3 billion really to do random audits. And just like in IRS, it is anticipated that about 5% of covered entities and BAs will be randomly audited by the government every year to ensure that Cs and BAs are indeed HIPAA compliant. So it's a similar approach that IRS does for either not filing taxes or incorrect taxes being filed. The government agency will implement similar periodic audits. And I talked about the fines being increased, and the fines, if levied, are in fact used to fund the HHS and OCR and the state agencies. So there is a shared incentive for them to ensure that everybody is following the law. Not only that, the state auditor generals are now empowered by the law to bring civil actions on behalf of the government or on behalf of the whistleblowers. And there are some new data breach notification requirements that have changed. So while this might seem like a lot of penalties and a lot of enforcement, as I said, the purpose is really to facilitate and protect healthcare information of patients and of customers. And because of the movement of storing and accessing information online, the need for protecting the PHI information is much greater because it's prone to much more attacks and being compromised. And the reason why everybody wants to move to electronic medical records is to bring down the healthcare costs. So the government's mandate is, the larger objective is to really reduce the healthcare costs that we as a country face, which is very expensive and sometimes wasteful. And the purpose is by using technological advances, electronic medical records, we are helping bring down the healthcare costs, but there are some safeguards, additional safeguards that come into being once the information is stored in electronic medical records. So this is showing you a business associate definition. As I said, that the definition of a business associate who's now required to be compliant as per the law is anybody and everybody who touches PHI information. So whether you're talking about electronic medical record providers, accountants, lawyers, even garbage disposal agencies that are dealing with PHI information, anybody and everybody is a BA. And now, as I said earlier, that the covered entities and BAs have a shared responsibility. So earlier, the covered entity could sign a business associate agreement and leave it at that. But that's just a step in the direction that HHS wants you to do. You have to proactively ensure that the business associate, when they have acquired the information, PHI information from you, are indeed taking steps to ensure privacy and security of PHI. And so there is a need to do more proactive probing of the business associates' compliance status to ensure that they're indeed protecting the information. So now let's change gears and talk about risk analysis and meaningful use attestation and what does it mean to accomplish that. So a lot of this information might already be known to this audience because you are already probably doing this. So I'll make it quick and then focus on the solution that addresses these requirements. So risk analysis is a broader requirement that comes about not just from HIPAA, but as an organization, if you're trying to protect and minimize risk exposure, and the risk exposure could come because of attackers. The attackers could be malicious insiders, for example, a disgruntled employee, or it could be a cyber hacker who's out there trying to look for protected information, whether it's health information, whether it's credit card information. All of these personal information have a big price in the underground. I was reading the other day that every credit card information, every single credit card is worth about $200 in the underground market. Every social security number is worth about $400 in the underground market. So the fact that you as an organization have some protected information that can then be compromised and sold in the underground market can have huge consequences. The average cost of dealing with a breach is about $5.5 million. So this can put businesses, companies out of business. And this is because of lawsuits that your customers might bring about or fines that the government might levy. All of those add up to this number. So this is a big reason why you want to do risk analysis, just besides meeting the HIPAA security requirements, is also to ensure that as an organization you are protecting any intellectual property or protected health information, PHI information that you have. And certainly from a HIPAA high-tech perspective, that's required for getting the EHR incentive that the government gives out to anybody who has electronic medical record implementation and can show that they are taking steps towards minimizing or eliminating risk to protect the privacy and security of the PHI information. So meaningful use attestation requires you to do security risk analysis, and that's another big reason. And by the way, that's required, risk analysis is required across the board by other regulations and other verticals as well. And really risk management is a way to justify and understand the ROI of all the security and compliance efforts that you're putting together. And if you do a good risk analysis, you should be able to come back with tangible benefits or tangible numbers to show that the risk exposure has been minimized by such and such percentage by following certain guidelines and remedial measures that a risk analysis process would cover. Excuse me. So let's jump into HIPAA Omnibus risk analysis. What does it entail? And there is a lot of confusion I see in the marketplace about, so what do I need to do? And do I need to do security scanning? Do I need to do assessment? Do I need to do the complete HIPAA assessment? These are the typical questions that I get asked. So I want to lay down very clearly what is needed as a part of the security risk analysis requirements for HIPAA. So the first step is to understand all the assets, PHI critical assets, and the definition of a PHI critical asset is any asset that is involved in either storing, accessing, or transmitting PHI information. So if you have servers with PHI information stored locally, that's a PHI asset. If you have firewall gateways that are sending encrypted information, but electronically, that's a PHI asset. If you have client workstations or doctor workstations or nurse workstations that's viewing patient records, that's a PHI asset. So anything and everything that touches PHI information may not modify it. As long as you view it, access it, store it, or transmit it, that's a PHI asset. And then for all the PHI assets, it's important to understand what kind of activities or events can compromise that asset. And that's determined through threats and vulnerabilities. So threats are malicious actions that can compromise assets by exploiting vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities could be because of technology, safeguards not being in place, or it could be because of some processes or people-related threats that need to be accounted for. So any threat and vulnerability needs to be accounted for. And then what are the current controls, security controls that are in place to mitigate some of these potential threats and attacks that might happen? So that's important to know. If you have a robust security program, chances are that your controls are pretty robust, and that's good. But if you don't have a robust security program, then you want to make sure that your controls that are in place to deal with such eventualities, attacks, are indeed strengthened. And then how likelihood is that this particular threat can compromise the asset by exploiting the vulnerability? So there's a likelihood and impact computation that comes into being. So all these steps are part and parcel of the risk analysis, and at the end of the day, you come up with a risk exposures number, score, that tells you how amenable or how likely is it, and what's the potential impact that the risk exposure might happen, might affect you as an organization. And lower the risk exposure, better it is. And so the purpose of the risk analysis, as I said earlier, is to understand as an organization how likely is it that you would be compromised, and what's the risk exposure for losing information that's critical to the company. And so that's what we're trying to do here. And then once you know the risk, once you determine the risk, then the next step is to figure out how to remediate all the gaps and risk exposure items that were found by putting together new safeguards, new controls, and might be policies. So this is really the 9-step process for doing security risk analysis, whether it's for HIPAA or for anything else. It's the same process. So what the audit program from OCR, having talked about the risk analysis process, if you look at the audit requirements from OCR, they have published audit protocols that if Office of Civil Rights comes knocking and wants to audit anybody, whether it's a covered entity or OCR, they're essentially looking for some key implementation guidelines. So they're looking for privacy and security rule related mechanisms, safeguards that have been put in place from the HIPAA rule. Certainly the breach notification, that there are basic policies in place, and then risk analysis, meeting the risk analysis requirements. So these are like the minimal core set that any audit program or audit request from OCR will require you to show. And the demonstration, it should be shown in terms of an audit trail, in terms of a program that not only puts this in place one shot, but there is a way to continuously monitor how things are changing. Because I always say that security and compliance is a journey, and it's good to be compliant at a point in time, but guess what? The next day you might have new assets coming in or new employees joining or leaving, and you might be out of compliance. So there is a need to continuously update and keep up with the changes that are happening to ensure that your HIPAA compliance and security posture is indeed maintained and monitored continuously. So if you're an organization, the question that we often get asked is, what do I need to do? And what are the core steps required to be a security hardened organization, to be a HIPAA compliant organization? and how do I continuously make sure that I'm doing the right set of things. So what I've done here is to try to enumerate the different steps that are really required for any HIPAA compliant organization. And what that also means is that you will be ready for an OCR audit. We don't want to be audited, but as per the Murphy's Law, it might happen. So you want to be prepared and ready to face such an eventuality. And what I'm showing you here are the steps that as an organization, as a learning organization, we want to be able to do these basic steps to ensure that we are ready for any kind of audit if it comes knocking. So the first step is to understand what are the changes that HIPAA Omnibus brings about. And I mentioned this earlier, and that's a recap at a high level of what the changes are. And it's important to address it head-on by putting together a security and compliance plan. If you already have a plan, that's great. You're way ahead of a lot of the other people, but it's important to ensure that the HIPAA components are included in that. And any security or compliance plan includes assigning of roles with accountability and responsibility. There should be training for employees that are involved in the process or handle the data. Excuse me. And there's a need to ensure that there's clear alignment of goals and responsibilities. And of course, policies and procedures are an integral part of this whole process. Then the next step is to do a self-assessment, and the self-assessment will tell you where you stand today vis-a-vis the HIPAA requirements. And that will give you a gap report, or you'll be able to do gap analysis, and there's a need to do security scanning to assess vulnerabilities. And this is again going back to the risk analysis requirements, where you need to know for every PHI critical asset what are the vulnerabilities that exist. And the vulnerabilities can be due to IT assets or due to processes, because policies may not be in place. So you need to evaluate holistically, evaluate the vulnerabilities that exist in the company. And the information from the self-assessment and the PHI asset scanning contributes towards the risk analysis. So as an organization, you want to know what your risk exposure is. And once you know the exposure, the gaps that exist, and the relative prioritization of the gaps, then the next step is to put together a remedial plan to ensure that you've got the controls to compensate for the risk that was found, so that in the next cycle of assessment, that risk is manageable. And then you want to create a proof of compliance in the form of attestation reports, compliance reports. We call it the report on compliance, ROC. And once you have that, that should provide complete audit trail of what are the different activities that need to happen, that took place, and that needs to be documented and provided as proof. And then continuously monitor any changes that happen and do this on an ongoing basis. So these are the 9 steps that we recommend that any security or HIPAA compliance conscious organization needs to have. These are the building blocks of a security and compliance plan from a HIPAA perspective, and a lot of these are common across different regulations that you'll see. So I just want to re-emphasize that there's a need for continuous monitoring, and the need for continuous monitoring comes from the fact that things change. Things change from a compliance perspective, from a security perspective. There are new vulnerabilities being discovered on a daily basis, and new threats are emerging. So it's important to continuously monitor your vulnerabilities, your processes. There might be new employees coming in, new assets coming in, and any changes that are happening needs to be incorporated into the planning process. And so there's a need for continuous monitoring, and all of this might seem pretty onerous, but that's where the automation tool can help you and simplify your life a lot. And so as a successful organization, how we often get asked, there's so many things to do, and what are the basic set of things that we need to take care of? So I talked about doing risk analysis, monitoring your status, and making sure that your policies, your training, and responsibilities, and and that you have a full-fledged security and compliance program. Those are the key basic tenets that you need to make sure as an organization you're doing all these things on a regular basis. So having provided the background on all the things that you as an organization need to do, clearly a lot of this seems pretty onerous, as I said earlier, and there's a need to simplify and automate a lot of these things. And we're going to talk about AG5, which is a tool that eGestalt has built from the ground up to address the HIPAA market requirements. While the tool is pretty vertical agnostic, we support other regulations, but HIPAA is one of the key regulations that we have. So AG5 is a cloud-based subscription service that takes care of HIPAA security, risk, and compliance management. And as I said, HIPAA High-Tech is one of the key frameworks that we support, and I'll show you that in the demo as well. The solution also supports security scanning. So as I said earlier, risk analysis requires you to do security scanning of all PHI critical assets. So you can use the solution for scanning all your IT assets. It will discover all your IT assets. It will scan them for vulnerabilities, and the assets could be sitting inside the company or outside the company. We can take care of both internal and external scanning. There is a complete risk management framework that's built into the tool, and this meets the meaningful use attestation requirements for risk analysis. You can generate a single report with the risk analysis information that can be submitted to the government for getting the meaningful use grants. And we've tried to simplify the process from an implementation point of view by creating a wizard-based expert system approach where whether you're talking about security information, compliance information, risk information, all of these are unified and integrated using an expert system. So as a CIO, as a chief compliance officer, you have to deal with one set of gap reports and remediation guidance, and that simplifies the implementation and understanding of the whole process. There's a complete knowledge base which has information about the regulation, what needs to be done, how it will be done, everything that you need to understand the scope and implement the requirements is in the knowledge base. We provide a package of policies and templates for HIPAA, for example, that you can either adopt as it is, or you can replace it with your current policies if you have them. So you have a complete policy management tool included in the solution. And this is all cloud-based subscription model, so you can start with one location, add multiple locations or services as you go along. So it's extensible. So from a solution perspective, and I'll show you a demo real quick here, what you get is a complete automation tool for dealing with all of your security, risk, and compliance needs. And you can use it for pre-audits, audits, or bring in external auditors. They can audit all the information that's there. You can use it for continuous monitoring. You have an administrative console that allows you to manage your infrastructure. If you're a CIO of an organization with multiple locations, your dashboard will show you the security and compliance posture for all of your different locations. So it's a bird's eye view, and then you can also dive in and get an operational view on every location. So all of this can be done remotely through the administrative console that's available to you. And of course, managing risk, generating meaningful use attestation reports is part of what we do from an automation perspective. And this is all remotely done. So traditionally, security scanning requires you to install a scanning appliance in the local network. You run the scan, you understand, and you are left to implement and interpret and implement the results of the scan. So what we do is we are able to remotely initiate the scan, and we will interpret the results automatically. The system will interpret the results automatically and tell you what gaps or what controls are affected. So it's a remote management architecture that we've created for a managed services approach that a CIO or a Chief Compliance Officer can use to completely manage their infrastructure. And BA management is part of the framework, and then we have scale from small businesses to large enterprises that they can use this. So let me quickly show what is the workflow automation that's done in the tool before I jump into the live demo. So what the tool does is it automates, as I said earlier, the complete HIPAA security risk and compliance management process. Not only that, it enables you to continuously monitor any changes that might happen at any point in time. And as a operations head or as the Chief Information Officer, CIO or CISO, you will also get an executive level dashboard to monitor at a high level what's going on. So if you look at the process of assessing and managing the HIPAA compliance and security process, the first step is really to do a baseline. And the baselining really is assessing the current implementation. What are the gaps that exist? And that's done using a security scan, using a HIPAA assessment, and a risk analysis. And the output of this stage is a gap report with remediation guidance from the tool. It will tell you what are the components missing from your program today and how to fix it. And then the next step is to put together the remediation plan based on the tool. And as I said, the remediation plan involves putting together a security or compliance strategy. There might be a need for new policies, new contracts if that's not in place or partially might be in place. There might be a need for training. There might be a need to understand what are the best practices in the industry to implement certain gaps that might be there. So all of these remediation guidance is provided by the tool that can help you understand and scope out what needs to be done and how to go about fixing the problems that are found. And once you've done that, then you go back and reevaluate the current status in terms of your HIPAA posture. And if things are fixed, if things are manageable with an allowable risk, then you're good to go for this cycle. But there's a need to continuously repeat this cycle. And the repetition needs to be done, as I said earlier, because things change. So the baselining, remediation, reassessment, and monitoring cycle can be scheduled, can be repeated, can be automated using the tool. And at any point in time, you have access to a real-time dashboard that I'll show you, which has your security risk and compliance posture, and then you can generate reports that are available with the click of a button. And the purpose is to automate, make your life simple, keep you on top of any HIPAA issues that might come up. And by the way, the tool supports other regulations. So if your organization needs HIPAA with PCI, SOC 2, name any regulation, we would have support for that. And that's integrated into this workflow automation picture that I showed you. So with that, let me just pause here and take you to a live demo so that you can see this in action. Actually, before that. So this is, we have multiple editions of the software depending on business size and depending on services that you would need. You can pick and choose the edition type, and they're priced differently. The functionality-wise, it's different. And we have different deployment models. So if you are a small business with single user location, or if you have a few locations, or multi-location, multiple business unit kind of a setup, there are multiple deployment options that we have. You can have a centrally managed option, or what we call a hierarchical approach, where every location has an independent view along with a rolled up view at the central office. So there are multiple deployment options that are available, and what I'm going to show you is a single customer location and what it looks like. Let me log out and log back in to see what to show you the experience. So you can access the service using a browser. We support Firefox, Chrome, and IE browsers. And when you go to agify.com, you are prompted with a login login information. So I'm going to log in as Anderson Clinic. This is a demo account, and I'm going to show you what the Anderson Clinic dashboard looks like. So now I'm logging in, and I'm looking at my HIPAA compliance status that the tool is showing me based on all the work that I've done with it. So when I log in, I have a complete bird's eye view of my security and risk and compliance status. It's taking a few seconds to refresh. So what you see here is I'll minimize this. So what you see here is a real-time dashboard that is partitioned into 3 different sections. There is the risk section, which tells me my overall risk status. There is a security section, which tells me my all the IT assets that were discovered and what are the different risk criticality of these assets that were discovered. And then it's telling me my HIPAA compliance status. And I have a number of assessments that are in progress, and they're telling me that I need some of them are complete, some of them are incomplete, and I need to do some work. So let's dive right in. So let's start with the security status. So I can click right on the dashboard to drill down, and this can be a IT manager or an operational manager who's looking to understand the results of the security scan that was done and how to fix the problems that are found. So here it tells me and these assets were discovered automatically by the scanning tool. And it tells me my hardware devices, my software assets, it tells me the asset names, and when the last scan was done, the number of vulnerabilities that were found, and it will also tell me which compliance controls failed. So this is the expert system that I was talking about. Let me show you that in a So the interpretation of the vulnerability scan results is done automatically by the tool. And what I mean by that is that we will take the scan results, and if a PHI critical asset is being scanned, we will automatically fail HIPAA controls that are dependent on those PHI critical assets. So for example, here, this is a vulnerability view of all the vulnerabilities that were found in my infrastructure. And it tells me that I have a critical vulnerability that allows remote code execution. And it's affecting this particular asset, which is called itim51.com. It's a severity of critical nature. And there are 4 controls that are being affected as a result of this. So that's the problem. And so I need to fix the problem so that I can fix all these controls that are failed as a result of this. The controls that are affected are shown here. They are HIPAA-related controls that deal with citations or controls that are affected by this. So that's the security scanning view that I can have access to using my tool. So if I'm the CISO of an organization, I have the complete security risk and compliance status. I can, if I deal with a multiple location organization, let me show you an example of that. I'm already logged in here, for example. So this is a multi-site organization where I have clinics in 5 different locations. And so if I'm the CIO of a multi-site location clinic, I can see the status, the security status, and the compliance status of all my locations in one shot. And I have access to a unified view, which means I can look at the gaps that come from all the security, compliance, and risk issues in one shot. And I'll show you a report of that. And then I can do all of this remotely without being on site. I can initiate a scan, I can manage the scanning process remotely. And my dashboard is updated in real time, and reports are generated in real time. And I also have access to a complete policy management framework. So I wanted to show you the multi-location view but let me switch back to the single location view. The content is the same except it's displayed differently. So now let me show you the HIPAA assessment process. So this is what the assessment process looks like. What we've done is we've simplified the whole HIPAA assessment process to ensure that I'll just answer the assessment that I need to complete. And so this is the user experience that an SSE in the organization, the SSE could be a chief compliance officer, it could be an IT manager. This is what they see in terms of understanding what the HIPAA requirements are. So what you'll see here is that on the left-hand side are the HIPAA citations. There are 268 citations that are in the system right now for Anderson Clinic. It's a small business. For larger enterprises, that number goes up to 360 plus. And there are different categories of requirements: admin, EHRT, security, privacy, and I can click on one particular location, one particular citation to give you an example. So here, let's take this one. So here I have a control which says I need to do risk management. Now this is the citation which is legalese coming from HIPAA. What we've done is we've taken this citation and mapped it to simple yes or no questions. So here the question being asked is that have you prioritized and selected safeguards for the risk assessment findings? And you can see here that this question was auto-answered because of a scan that was done. And the system, through the expert system, figured out that the risk assessment cannot be yes because there are PHI critical assets that have vulnerabilities that will lead to exposure and compromise. So this is the power of the expert system. So you as an end user, as a SSE, don't have to answer all the questions. Some of it will be auto-answered intelligently by our expert system. The other thing that I would like you to look at and would draw your attention to is this knowledge base at the bottom. And this knowledge base is really a repository of information that allows you to understand the scope of what is being asked here. So for example, this question is about risk management. So we have implementation guidance, which is clickable. And it tells you what these control requirements are. So it tells you what the control objective is, what is expected as an organization that you need to do, and then how it gives you guidance on how to implement this particular control. So again, and then it tells you that there's a policy that you need to look at. And the policy is available right here. You can click on the policy, and this policy is again available to you as part of the knowledge base, which allows you to either use it as it is or calibrate it with what you have. And you can either customize it or adopt it as it is. And then there are other sections like citation guidance. It tells you in a bit more, provides you with more information about the question. It tells you best practices, what other organizations like you are doing to meet this requirement. So you've got everything that you need from a contextual help perspective, we believe, to answer this question or answer this yes or no. And then you go to the next question by clicking arrow, and you keep going till you complete all the requirements. At any point in time, you can click on the dashboard to get a real-time status of your current progress or lack thereof. So it will tell you how many citations exist, 268. You've answered 60 of them. And what you see here are, these are unique questions. So what we do internally is that if a particular question or answer to a particular question is relevant to multiple citations, we don't ask you the same question. We will propagate the answers to all the questions that are similar. So your unique questions that you're being asked are really 186. The citations are 268, 186, and you've answered 49 unique questions. And your overall risk status right now is being shown by this red heat graph. So you're on the red side, which means you're highly risky because you haven't completed all the answers with a yes yet. So that's really what the compliance assessment user experience looks like. I want to show you the policies that comes with it. And as I said earlier, we have a complete policy package. We have a complete policies package that's built into the tool. And this policies package includes about 50 policies, procedures, templates that are built into the tool. So for example, we have a business associate agreement example that's built into the tool. And there is a notice for privacy practices. There's a NPP that I talked about. It's also included here. So these policy documents, again, you can use it as it is. You can use them as evidence for showing that you're compliant with certain requirements, or you can change them. You can edit it online. It's a complete policy management framework, and you can say this is a new policy that we have in place. You can save it, you can publish it, and then this policy becomes your policy across the organization. It gets automatically propagated to all your compliance assessments. Each policy is linked to a set of controls, and the system will keep track of any changes and automatically update these controls with the policy linkage. So this is, again, as I said, a complete policy management framework that allows you to manage your entire compliance status and policy management framework as well. So that's about the compliance assessment. One more thing I want to show you is the security scanning process. So I showed you how you can view the results, and I want to show you how it works in very quick, briefly. So essentially the magic is done by this scanning agent that you can install remotely, and the scanning agent can be installed on any machine. It doesn't need any special credentials, doesn't need any special machines. As long as it's a Windows 7 or a Windows 8 machine, that you can install the scanner, and this scanner needs to be installed one per location. So if you have a network of connected devices, install the scanning agent anywhere in the network. It will then go out and discover all the assets that are in the network, and then you're able to use a very simple interface that I'm going to show you here to manage the entire process. You can manage the entire process remotely for all of your locations. So for example, here I have a scanner management interface, and this allows me to choose a particular schedule. So I can say I want to scan it on the 14th. Should not be less than, of course. So let me pick a date, 20th. And I can pick an hour and a minute. I can repeat the schedule weekly, monthly, or every 5 days, let's say. So I have complete flexibility, and once I do this is all, it works automatically, because the system will remember this, will do the scans for you, and it will discover all the assets that were found by the scanning agent. In this case, there were 41 assets that were discovered by the scanning agent, and you can include a subset of these assets here to be included for the scanning process. So it's a complete vulnerability scanning tool, but remotely deployable through the cloud. And again, the results are interpreted by the system, unlike traditional vulnerability scanning tools, so that you're able to then see the results of how these vulnerabilities affect your compliance and risk posture. So again, it's a complete unified and integrated version of the tool that is completely integrated into your overall process. From a risk management perspective, I won't spend too much time on it, but I want to just highlight that we support the complete risk management framework, whether it's NIST, ISO, Octave, and we have come up with a complete automation process to make the risk management process very simple. We are able to leverage the information from the security scanning tool, from the compliance assessment tool, to come up with a overall risk posture, risk score, and with minimal manual input. And again, from an automation perspective, this is very unique in the industry, because of our ability and because of our expert system, we are able to minimize the heavy lifting required by organizations. So this is all available and implemented in the tool. Let me show you a few reports that are generated by the tool. That will help you understand what the output looks like. So as I said earlier, we have complete set of reports with complete audit trail for HIPAA compliance. So this is an example of a report that was generated by the system, and it tells you all the different people from different organizations that are involved in the assessment process. We have what we call a role-based partitioning of the questionnaire that allows you to divide and conquer within the company. You can involve your business associates to be part of the assessment process. As I said, in HIPAA compliance, now the BAs contribute to the overall risk of the covered entities as well. So the tool will not only manage your internal security and risk posture, but also incorporate your BA's compliance posture as well. So you're able to track and automate all of that. And so it will tell you your overall risk status, it will tell you your internal risk status, and if you're working with a BA, in this case physiotherapist, you can know their BA risk status as well. And then it will tell you your number of controls that were passed, that were failed. It will give you a complete gap report of controls that were compliant. So green is compliant, red is non-compliant. It will list you, give you a complete list of gaps that were found, and it will also not only show that, but also give you the remediation guidance in this report on compliance. So as you're going through the process, you have complete visibility on the dashboard and in report format that allows you to stay on top of any things that are issues that are found. And then there is a detailed audit trail that's also available to you. I want to show you a meaningful use report example as well that is again generated by the tool, and this report can be submitted to the government. It can be generated with the click of a button, and it can be submitted to the government right away to show that you've done security risk analysis. And the security risk analysis report really draws its information from both the compliance assessment and the security scanning process. And it will tell you your compliant controls, non-compliant controls, and pre-populate the information with assets that were found to be critical, and then what the vulnerabilities that were found, and then it'll give you a set of gaps that were found today that you can work on. So non-compliant controls, compliant controls, and then give you remediation guidance on what you need to do to fix the gaps that were found. So again, it's a complete risk analysis overview that you as an organization, when you're starting off, you can use this report to fix the problems that are found, and then go back and do the assessment again to get a complete status. I want to show you the remediation report that's generated by the tool. And again, it's very detailed for an IT manager to go about fixing the problems that are found. So in this example, there were a number of assets that were discovered automatically by the scanning agent. It tells you the criticality of the vulnerabilities that were found, and then it gives you details on how to fix the problems. It gives you information about how long will it take. So for example, for this particular asset, which has this IP address, there's a vulnerability which requires you to install the Microsoft Windows 2003 server patch. It'll take 30 minutes to accomplish this remediation, and you can download the patch from here, and it will fix 8 issues that were found. So again, very detailed operational view. You can assign this to an IT manager to fix it and literally track progress or lack thereof with this report. So it's again very detailed information that allows you to have complete information about it. So I know I went through a lot of information here, and let me just pause now to show you something else. So we also have training integration into the tool, and training is really available with the click of a button. You're able to buy a number of training courses. If you need HIPAA training, for example, it's available to you, and we will have We have multiple courses that we've worked with Format, for example. It's a training company that allows us to offer these courses to you. And these courses are pretty well recognized. They're pretty much the leading training provider that you can leverage and buy from the tool. So it's, again, a complete turnkey soup to nuts solution for dealing with all of your HIPAA security, risk, and compliance management needs. And in closing, what I would say is that while HIPAA-related issues might seem daunting, but I want to assure you there that eGestalt Agify takes care of all those issues arising out of HIPAA, and you can generate reports, monitor and track your HIPAA compliance and risk status, and generate reports that can be used for meaningful use grants as well. And if you're just interested in doing risk analysis to understand and cybersecurity harden your organization, risk analysis in itself is an endeavor that needs to be pursued. So with that, let me turn it over to Todd, or we can take Q&A, I guess, now, and go ahead.
I'd say let's take some questions and answers right now. I think most people are muted, so we've got the chat window. You know, the things I just want to highlight, I mean, I think as an old IT director who was in charge of 10 sites for a large cardiology practice, managing those devices, the vulnerabilities, you have 1,000 different tools that are available to you to maybe analyze Windows, you know, their risk, but you had to manually kind of coordinate those all together to then try to crosswalk, you know, which of these vulnerabilities may, you know, apply to a certain HIPAA regulation versus another one, admin versus technical, things like that. And so that's what's impressed me the most about this. I think it does consolidate the IT and HIPAA reporting very nicely, as well as includes an entire, you know, what we saw, an entire list of policies. So I'm curious if people on the line have any questions. I don't know if we can unmute everybody.
I don't know that we can unmute everybody. Chandy, do you know how to?
Yeah, I have to do one by one. I can do that.
So if we can get people to maybe mute their own line if you don't want to ask a question. But do we have any questions out there? We always have a shy audience. Well, we definitely could take questions offline as well. You can email them to us at Wide River, or you can email them directly to Anupam. I know that we've got your guys' contact information, but again, I think that this is a very comprehensive tool. It fits into what critical access hospitals and our small to medium-sized clinics need in order to maintain this compliance. And if you look at this, and if the output even seems to be overwhelming to you, know, though, that this is a great tool that you can use with other IT associates or other consultants like Wide River, where people could sit down with you and be able to take a look at this output and help you manage that environment far easier than if they just had to come in and basically do the individual discovery where they first are trying to do an inventory of your assets manually, and then an inventory of, you know, your HIPAA policies and procedures, and then again the outputs that this produces for you at will. It's a great documentation feature. So again, whereas Wide River always says we're vendor neutral, we are not vendor stupid, and we just like to keep saying that when we see tools that we know are going to help, we want to make sure we get them out to you guys in the field. So I think with that, if there are no questions.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that if you, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that if you want to play around with the tool, and you can download a community edition which is free from egestalt.com, and that allows you to do a diagnostics on your infrastructure, and that might be one way to understand better and play around with it. Or if you want to see a demo of the tool, please reach out to Todd or me, and we can schedule a demo to get more information.
Absolutely, and I think it's so important that, again, if people have questions, because it seems overwhelming, please do reach out for follow-up, because I know that eGestalt has a number of people who could dial in and walk through your specific situation. But we just see so many failed audits as a result of the HIPAA risk assessment not being performed correctly. I want to say that the most recent numbers were well over 20% of meaningful use audits that occurred in private practice environments actually failed. And the number one reason was because of the risk assessment. And that's just, as we say, it's never free money, but that incentive dollars is very necessary to you guys in order to adopt and fully implement these technologies. And that 2 or 3 years after you've received it, probably already spent it, to suddenly be audited and then have to turn that money back over to the government for not having performed these assessments to the letter of the law, it's crushing to some practices. So please do consider it. Again, if you got any questions, please reach out to us. Audits, as you see on our upcoming events here, we are constantly going to be talking about that. You can see these on our upcoming events page on the Wide River website, as well as a few other events here. But again, if you have any questions, please do contact us, contact eGestalt, and we will do whatever it is we can to make sure that we get you guys the right answers in a timely manner. Well, thank you very much, Anupam. I think this was absolutely excellent. Again, very innovative tool for the small and medium space, and could obviously even be scaled up to very large enterprises very easily. So,
thank you, Todd, for the opportunity, and thank you all for your time and for coming to attend the webinar. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.